Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Data Standard Audio Experience. I'm your host, Catherine Tao. I'm here today with Mahesh Nair, the SVP of Data Strategy and Management at Moody's. And today we're speaking about data governance and data risk. So, welcome to the show, Mahesh. I'm excited to speak with you today.
Thanks, Catherine. Glad to be here.
Yeah, awesome. And we're so glad to have you. So, could you tell the audience just more about your background and go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm currently the SVP of Data Strategy and Management at Moody's. I have about 19 years plus experience in the data and analytics space, doing everything from BI, data warehousing, data analytics, data governance, data quality, master data management through these 19 plus years, both in a technical role as well as more of a business liaison. My previous role was in the finance chief data office at JP Morgan Chase. So where again, a lot of it was focused around strategy and execution, portfolio of about 150 plus applications.
Yeah, that sounds great. And how can data governance help better understand data risk?
Sure, that's a great question. So to understand or to actually answer that question, we first need to think about what is data risk, right? Now, data risk can take multiple forms. It could be risks associated with a breach. There are regulatory requirements around how data is captured, stored, how long it is retained. You hear about GDPR, CCPA, all these regulatory requirements around customer data retention and deletion. There are other states in the United States coming up with similar such requirements. So all of these put a significant onus on the firms to be compliant and also manage their data well, or else there are risks of, a typical breach costs about $300 million plus dollars worth of impact. One record breach typically costs about $150 worth of impact, one single record. So the cost implications are significant for firms. So data governance plays an important role by the fact that it allows you to understand what data you have through data cataloging, understanding the data, having metadata about what data you have, being able to classify that data, whether it's confidential or highly confidential, and so on. And secondly, you also understand the data lineage. Where is the data coming from within the organization? Can you trust that data? Because if you're doing regulatory filings and you can't rely on the quality and the fidelity of the data, then that poses a significant risk that you are reporting wrong numbers to the regulator. So that is how data governance plays a significant role in understanding, assessing, and then managing the firm's data risk.
Yeah, definitely. And you used a very great example. And it sounds like something like a breach, like a data breach, could be very expensive and very costly for a situation like that. So, great example there. And I wanted to also talk about just regulation now in correlation with data governance. So, how does data governance help comply with this regulation?
Sure. So again, when you look at, and this is my experience, while it has been predominantly in the financial services industry, but it is equally applicable in other industries like healthcare, aviation, what have you. I mean, and it's only increasing as you look around. There are calls to regulate firms even more. Right, every day we hear in the media, in the news, even here in the United States, the CEOs of tech firms being called to the Senate and being questioned about their practices with data and how they're managing and the content. So from a regulatory standpoint, there are heavily regulated industries, and then there are firms which are now, because they are becoming so big and are becoming these huge platform companies, they will be subjected to some sort of regulation in the near future. So in that context, data governance, again, what data governance does for you is it provides you with a framework, right? It's essentially a framework which includes a structure, an organizational structure, a set of processes and standards and best practices, and then tools. When these three come together, along with the data that you want to manage, that's what data governance is all about. So with respect to meeting the regulatory requirements, again, going back to what I said previously, data governance helps you ensure that you can trust the data that you're sending it out to the regulators. So it helps you build data quality or manage your data quality, helps establish data lineage within the firm. So you know which systems are the authoritative sources of data within the firm, and therefore can be trusted upon to be using that information for the right purposes. So that's how data governance plays a significant role, especially in the United States. If you look after the 2008 financial crisis, the regulator came out and said all the banks now need to, especially the big banks, had to have a chief data office. So the very essence of having data governance is almost now demanded by the regulator to say you have a practice. Even now, if you look at the recent example, the whole Citibank situation where they wired almost $1 billion when they were supposed to pay out only a small fraction of the loan back, they got pulled up by the regulators for that mishap. And now you look at Citibank and they're trying to address that. So data governance has its genesis in some way for regulated industries in being compliant with regulation, but it will happen more so even in more industries going forward.
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk about the data now. So, how does the data governance process relate to having a firm grasp on kind of more of the streamline of data? And I know that a lot of companies have been having issues with just having more of a streamline of data within their company and just being more AI and data driven. And so, what are your thoughts on this data governance process?
Yeah, so again, very relevant in the world we operate today. Everyone's talking about digital transformation, especially accelerated by the whole pandemic that we have all been through. And you look at the amount of data the companies are generating, capturing, storing within their four walls, it's huge. And making sense of that data, and not just to think about it from a regulatory standpoint, but even when you think about monetizing that data, because that's huge. Being able to understand, what your customers are looking for, or how the experience they are having with your products, with your supply chain, all that can be significantly impacted if you have the right data, if you understand your data well, if you have the right metadata around it, if there's common understanding around that data within the firm. Even machine learning and AI kind of initiatives dedicate a significant amount of the time and resources towards getting the right data, to cleaning up the data. You talk about to data scientists, a big portion of their time is all about getting to that right data set, cleaning it, making it ready for the models, to build models on or to train models on. So in every scenario, you look at data governance by virtue of standing up things like data quality, establishing authoritative data sources within the firm, establishing standard definitions within the firm, understanding data lineage within the firm. All of these essentially help answer these questions. So when a data scientist wants to, or a data analytics program wants to bring together data to build a predictive model or a recommendation engine, you need to be able to trust that data. You need to be able to get a data of, that you can use in your models. And that's where the value proposition is for data governance. If by instituting these standards and these policies and these frameworks, we can provide that to these data scientists and other stakeholders within the firm, then that's the sweet spot for data governance.
Yeah, definitely. And there are specifically two roles that I can think of that really use data governance within a lot of different industries and companies. And these two titles are the Chief Data Officer and the Director of Data Management. And so, can you talk a little bit about what is the difference between these two roles? Because it sounds like a lot of the things they do are very similar in terms of data governance in general. So, could you just go ahead and talk about that?
Sure. So, I think the titling is something that just could be very specific to typical industries or even companies, right? So for example, like I mentioned earlier, in the banking industry, chief data office is a kind of almost a mandated thing coming from the regulator, especially here. So you will see that at many of the banks and financial institutions. So financial industry in general, you'll see that. A lot of pharma, again, you'll see that. Because they're heavily regulated industries, they are probably at the forefront of establishing chief data offices and whatnot. I mean, chief data as a officer as a title and as a role has actually picked up in the last couple of years, really. So it's more of that. And you rightly pointed out, in many ways, what these two roles try to accomplish or what their job descriptions typically are very similar in that sense. Where firms do not necessarily have a chief data office, you would see these roles of a director or a senior director of data management and data governance and so on and so forth, where data governance is again a function within the company, responsible across all the other functions, going more horizontal across different verticals and other functions to help with data as it flows through the organization, right? But very comparable roles, you could actually pretty much transition from one to another or vice versa. It's just an industry thing about how the titles they are in different companies.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for clearing that up. That was something that I've always been wondering since it sounds the both the roles sound very similar. But that definitely makes a lot of sense from your explanation there. And I wanted to also just kind of stray away from the technical talk and the things that you do at your company and just talk about any hobbies or interests that you've been doing just to pass the time. So, is there anything that you've been doing just for fun to just during this time when everything's kind of remote? Did you pick up on anything for fun?
I didn't necessarily pick up anything, but I do run in my free time. I do long distance running. So luckily for me, that has helped me stay sane. Being all locked up, I make sure I go out and run whenever I can. So that definitely helps you breathe some fresh air, get some sunlight, and also is in many ways for me, it helps me think more clearly, things that are the problems that you're trying to solve at work, and you just need that free time when you're not reading emails or what have you, and just get to think. And so yeah, that's my way of recharging, if you will.
Yeah, I think exercises like running are such a great way to just clear your mind. And it's a great way to just go outside and get some fresh air too,
Yeah,
since we're always just
absolutely.
inside in front of our laptops doing work all day. But that's great. And are you training to do any marathons or anything like that?
As and when they happen again. I mean,
Yeah.
I am not a big fan of virtual
Yeah.
competitions. But yeah, I was registered for the New York City Marathon. That didn't happen, or that's not happening at least this year. So hopefully next year. I ran once in 2018. I'm hoping I'll do the next one whenever
Yeah,
that happens.
definitely. That's great. I hear a lot of people training during this time to run these marathons, and it sounds like there's just a lot more time on everyone's hands to be able to put time aside to do that. So that's great that you're that's one of your hobbies to do though.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
and I
glad.
want to say thank you so much, Mahesh, for joining us today. It was so great to speak with you. And we at the Data Standard, we're trying to build a community where everyone can just come together and talk to one another. So, what is something the community can do for you?
I think it's a great initiative, and I think as a professional in the space, talking to others who are in similar roles and do at different firms doing similar and or different things, there's always an opportunity to learn and share. So I think having such a community, having building network through such community, it could help in many ways. Just whether you're looking to learn, whether you're looking to hire some people, whether you are looking for yourself to for a new opportunity, I think it can help in many ways. So yeah, it's a great thing you guys are doing there.
Yeah, thank you. And is there any platforms that you want to just talk about where people can connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, so that's the best way to get in touch with me. For people in the industry, people doing similar stuff, I'm always open to connections. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And to our audience, for more information on the data standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io, as well as on our LinkedIn and YouTube channel. And thank you, Mahesh, for joining us. I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Catherine, for having me. It was a pleasure, and you have a good rest of your day.